An introduction to Sufism in Pakistan. I would say Sufism in general is an approach to life. I'm fond of saying that the practice of original Islam, because the Sufis were really at the epicenter of Islam when it first started. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, came with the message, he taught people who were closest to him. They would come to him personally and he would teach them, and he would teach them directly, and then they would have it wasn't a theoretical knowledge, it was a practical knowledge about how to live and how to be and the relationship that human beings have to that creational energy, whatever that is, how to discover that in a real way versus a dogmatic system of beliefs. Sufism offers a dynamic understanding of reality itself. So it's not a belief structure, it's an approach to reality. So it doesn't really matter what you believe, what you think it should be. What really matters is what it is and how do you deal with that. How do we deal with being created beings that are divine in their essence? So the conflict between a divinity and an endless, everlasting soul and the entrapment of a physical body in a restricted sphere of dynamic opposites. Like how do we contend with that? And the approach to walking that path in a sober and real way that leads to clarity is, and then how do we rectify that divinity in this world of physical separation, as it were? Like, we're not face to face with the blinding light that is Allah, nur upon nur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how can something so bright and so real be hidden from our perception? How do we contend with this what would be a paradox or an opposite? And that dynamic approach to walking a life path is basically what Sufism, I would say one of the aspects of what Sufism is. It's Islam original. So before the mazhabs were invented, some 150, 200 years later, there was this actual direct learning from one person to the next, from someone who is knowing it to a student who is learning it. And that student then is immersed in that way enough to where they can then be a teacher and teach others, and the cycle then continues from teacher to student. And it's a dynamic practice, not a dogmatic, static religion, as it were. Pakistan itself has a unique expression of Sufism because of the dynamics of this part of the world in general. There's deep mystical roots in India, in this area, the Indian subcontinent, that go back millennia, and the practices of meditation and certain other types of practices like fasting and dietary restrictions or these types of things. Also, the philosophical understanding of the different types of spirituality and the practices that are here in this area, all kind of blend together and support each other, and they have a way of giving a unique perspective depending on what type of situation is happening in the society itself. So the society in the Indian subcontinent has a unique stamp on the expression of Sufism itself. Kind of similar to the food. I mean, we eat, the whole world eats food, but each region has its own kind of unique style of food with the spices and different types of things and preparation. So Pakistani Sufism is really beautiful with a lot of spices. I can put it that way. And a lot of sweetness as well. So it's kind of reflected in the food we eat here. So one of the expressions of Sufism is to quiet the lower aspects of who we are, what we refer to as the nafs, right? There are levels of self, and nafs means self. And there are levels. There's starting from the more gross levels of self, the need for food, the need for sleeping, the need for self-expression, all these things, to the higher aspects of the soul, which would be the spirit and the wisdom and the direct knowing, and everything in between. There are many different systems in Sufism about describing this type of self. There's many different levels of self. A lot of Sufis come down to noting 7 different major levels of self, though there are many more subtle variations in our vibrational frequency, if you like, starting with the lower aspects and ending in the higher spiritual aspects. So coming to integrate those different levels of being and levels of perception into a cohesive, practical way of living is really the goal of Sufism.